Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me on yet another presentation. In this particular presentation, I will be taking you through certain clarifications related to education credentials and how they are evaluated in the new expression of interest. So Alberta has issued a clarification on specifically for education credentials, and I find it really interesting and I wanted to share with you. I hope that this will clarify certain doubts in your mind if you have any and help you with your application process. So this is the FAQ page for the Alberta immigration program, and here if you see here they have kind of clarified the requirements of education credentials under 5 different sections. Okay, so I have prepared a small illustration to explain and summarize this information, which I hope you will find it useful. Okay, so just before that, just a quick recap on the education credentials as far as the expression of interest is concerned. We know that the education is able to give you 22 points out of the maximum 100 points in the new expression of interest, and it all depends on two factors: the level of education and the location of education. So if you have completed your education, say if you have done your doctorate or your master's, you get up to 12 points or 10 points for a master's. And if you have completed your highest level education for which you have claimed 12 points, up to 12 points, if you have completed that in Canada, you can get up to another 10 points. If the education is completed in Alberta, you get 10 points. If it is obtained in any other province apart from Alberta, you get 6 points. If you have completed your education outside of Canada, you get only the points in the first section depending on the level of education. So I saw after this education thing was announced, there was a lot of questions on related to your Canadian education. Many people come to Canada for education and how those points would be calculated. So again, to start off, when this information was announced, this was very clear that it dealt with only your highest level of education. So say for example, if you are someone who came to Canada, who has completed his master's outside Canada and came to Canada for doing a bachelor's degree, you cannot claim points for bachelor's degree and you cannot claim additional points for completing your education in Canada because your highest education was not done in Canada. So this is what it clarifies in the FAQ also, which basically means that your education points are awarded only for your highest level of education. It doesn't matter where you completed your education. So the first section is independent of your location. You will look into your education. If your education was done outside of Canada, you would get a ECA or a education credential assessment, and once that is done, depending on that assessment, you get points, whether it's a master's or a bachelor's or whatever. So that is very clear that they have clarified. So I don't think there is any confusion now, or there should not be any confusion in minds of anybody else of what education credential earns you a point. It's your highest level of education, doesn't matter from where it was obtained. However, if you have obtained your education outside Canada, you will need to assess based on the ECA. So depending on your foreign degree, that has to go through a ECA process. The list of organizations who can do ECA is available on the link here, but they would do an assessment of your education and then find a Canadian equivalency. Now depending on that equivalency, you will get a point. So say for example, you have done a master's degree in your country, but if your equivalency comes to a bachelor's degree in Canada, you will get only points for your bachelor's degree. This is very important. Okay, so it must be based on the education selection of their ECA. So it doesn't matter what it says on your certificate. What matters is what says on your ECA. Be very clear what it says on your ECA. Like for example, certain professional degrees outside of Canada can be termed as equivalent to a bachelor's degree. So make sure you do your assessment. If you have multiple professional or education degrees in your home country, submit all of them to ECA and get ECA for each of them, and then choose the highest as per your ECA. Okay, very important point that is there for your education credential. Obviously, there is no points for secondary or lower credentials. So if you have done any kind of schooling, or if you have only done the secondary schooling or lower than that, you don't get any points for secondary schooling, even if that is done in Canada. So even if it is done even in Alberta or in Canada, you don't get any points for your secondary school level or lower than that points. Okay, it doesn't matter from where you have done your education or your secondary or lower level education. When it comes to recognizing your Canadian education, the institution that is granting you your certificate or credentials should be a Canadian designated institutions list. Okay, it should be on the designated institution list. This is obviously to meet quality standards and to stop different kind of frauds and ill practices going on. So if you have done your education in Canada, or if you are trying to enroll yourself for your education in Canada, make sure the institution that you choose or you enroll is in this particular list. Come to this particular web page and check your institution's name. Very important. You should not get stuck with a situation where you have spent your money and time in getting a Canadian credential education and then only realizing that it was not on the list of institutions. So very important, get yourself acquainted with this particular list. This is very important for any foreign students coming to Canada. And the last clarification that they have issued is that there could be certain scenarios, and this is very important in my mind, so pay a close attention to this. So there could be a situation where you have done a Canadian program. Okay, so that's not a degree, but you did some kind of a program or some kind of a degree in Canada for which you needed to do a bachelor's or a master's or a doctorate degree. If you are enrolling in such a program, then you can claim your postgraduate program as your highest level of education. So say for example, I did a 2-year professional postgraduate course in one of the Canadian universities. Obviously that institution has to be a DIL institute, but say I did a program for 2 years in Canada. For that program, I needed to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a doctorate degree. Now that program in itself might not be a degree, but for that program, I needed a bachelor's degree. So if in that case, if you do such a Canadian program, then that Canadian credential can be claimed as the highest level of education. For example, if that Canadian program needed a bachelor's degree, then you can claim points for a bachelor's degree. If that Canadian program needed a master's degree, then you can claim points for a master's degree in this particular grade. Plus, depending on the location of your Canadian program in Canada, you can get 10 points if it is in Alberta, or 6 points if it is in anywhere other than Alberta, if it is outside Alberta but within Canada. So this is again a very important clarification that is out there, right? So it's quite possible that you might be doing a program here which is not an official degree, but for which you needed a degree, or you have already completed a degree, but you did one more program which needed a degree. That could be a bachelor's degree, master's degree, doctorate degree, or any kind of thing. So if that is the case, then you can claim your Canadian program, that postgraduate program, as the highest level of education. So again, a very important clarification in my opinion, which is provided here. Okay, so I'll just quickly go to the graphics and show you the illustrations that I have prepared just to drive home the point that we just discussed. This is the different aspects that we just went through, these 5 FAQs that we just went through. So, and then we compared it with the expression of interest points grid for the education part. Okay, so we went through the whole shebang that your highest level of education would earn you up to a maximum of 12 points, and then depending on the education completed in Canada, you can get maximum up to 10 points. So you can get a total of 22 points from this particular. So what is the summary? If we look into this whole discussion, this is what I can summarize. Number one is that highest means highest. It doesn't matter from where you have done your highest education. It could be Canada or rest of the world. Highest is highest. Your secondary or lower credentials wouldn't matter, and that your ECA basically guides your equivalency. So it doesn't matter what your degree or your foreign degree says. If you have a foreign degree, then that has to go through a ECA process, and then depending on the equivalency, you can claim whether a doctorate or a master's or a bachelor's or a diploma certificate. Okay, very, very important to understand from this particular discussion. And then if you have done your education in Canada, then your institute or your college should be on the designated institutions list. And if you are doing any kind of postgraduate program or credential, they are okay to be claimed as long as the entry criteria for those particular programs or credentials were a bachelor's or a master's or a doctorate degree. So if you have done that kind of program, that can also be used as your highest level of education. It obviously you cannot claim it as the next highest. For example, if you have done a program which needed a bachelor's degree, right? Now, after completing the program, you cannot claim that program as a master's degree if it is not a master's degree, right? So you can still claim it as a bachelor's degree, but in addition, you will get 10 or 6 points depending on the location of that Canadian credential. A very important clarification that came out on this particular topic, because many people are doing, say, a bachelor's from outside Canada, coming again to Canada and doing one more bachelor's, or doing a program which needed a bachelor's. So if in that case, obviously you don't move to the next level of the ladder where you are claiming it as a master's degree, but still claim 7 points for bachelor's degree. And then if you have completed that in Alberta, very good, you get 10 more points. Or if you have done it anywhere else outside Alberta, you get 6 points. So a very, very important clarification and the important information that is out there. So I hope you guys understood, or you guys have a better understanding of what is out there. If you need anything more on this particular question, just reach out to me on the chat, and I'll just put the QR codes for my WhatsApp group on this particular section of the video. So if you want to join these groups, join the group. It's a good group. We are having good discussions out there, and I hope to see you and meet all of you there. Okay, and till then, thank you for joining and have a nice one. Thank you and bye-bye.